cheap this is a cheap way of doing account recovery. Account recovery is a big cost to all of these online services. Everything from your bank down to social networking, you name it. If they can solve the problem in an automated way with some sort of a script that asks you the answer to your questions, then hey, that's kind of like quasi-free. If they have to staff a call center with people, or if they have to do something online, or then there's a direct cost to them. Some of the other ways of doing account recovery take some time. I mean, another thing that you could do that doesn't cost too much, costs a little bit, but I mean, you could, when somebody loses their, can't log into their account, you could maybe send them a postcard in the mail. And it's not a great cost, but everybody is used to kind of instant gratification, and to the point that, I mean, there are people that just plain don't even bother remembering passwords. They just depend on account recovery procedures for those accounts that they don't use regularly. Now, account recovery questions, challenge questions, security questions, whatever you want to call them, are basically break all of the rules that we set for passwords. It's really another password or another set of passwords to your account, but it, I mean, all of the things that we tell people not to do with passwords, we just do it, or these sites just do it for security questions. We tell them, we need upper and lowercase letters and special characters and all of those sorts of things. But as far as the security question, your mother's maiden name is, one of the prompts, one of the things that they're looking for. No complexity at all to speak of. Secrecy. Keep your password secret. Don't even write it down, they often say. But the answers to these questions are things that you can find online in many cases for a lot of people. Facebook Ancestry, and who knows what the people that have the OPM data probably have the answer to a lot of things that people thought were very, very protected about. Don't share your password between multiple websites. But how many websites have you seen that ask for your mother's maiden name, or ask for your best friend, your childhood best friend's name, or things like that? I mean, this is another example. And then for storage, and this is harder, of course. It's very hard to get information on how people actually are storing passwords and answers to security questions. But passwords, you want to salt and hash, and that's pretty well established. Security questions, sometimes you need to be able to do a fuzzy match on those, and you can't salt and hash if you're going to do some sort of a fuzzy match. So these are more vulnerable at rest as well. Now, and with apologies to Per, because his company's name in Norwegian means good practices. I've always had trouble with the term best practices because they're so hard to nail down. I've asked any number of sort of IT administrators, why are we doing this? Well, it's a best practice. And I said, well, okay, but where? Oh, no, it's like there's this, if they don't want to answer the question, they call it a best practice. Yeah, well, that's not what they're going to call it. So it's really hard to nail these things down. I found one source of information that kind of corresponds to what I consider best practices, and it's from OWASP, and they're in the, I guess, exhibiting in the chill out room, but and so I don't mean to single them out, but this is just one that I was able to find, and they have a best practice, or rather a cheat sheet for choosing and using security questions. So I look to see what it says, and it says a number of things about them, but one of their objectives here is to make forget password solutions as palatable as possible. So if the point is to make it palatable, they're really focused on that sort of instant gratification thing. They're not focused on making the forgotten password solution as secure as it needs to be. Now, on the other hand, they do say at the beginning of another section of this document that passwords, that security questions are less robust than passwords. And I definitely have to agree with them there. But then if you read a little bit further down the paragraph here, it kind of scares me a little bit more, because it says it's talking about the fact that it possibly being considered as an element of multi-factor authentication. And we're just talking a completely different realm of security when we're talking about using challenge questions and in anything that might require multi-factor authentication. So yes, they're recognizing the problem, but then they kind of unwrap something that's even a little bit scarier. Now, one thing, I have never seen a situation where they prompt you for security questions and give you the option to opt out. It's always like, you must answer these questions now before we let you do anything else. So, security professionals, how many of you here make up answers to these questions? Lots of them? Yes. Okay. You are not representative of the population. So, I mean, here's an example. Of course, you just fill it in with gibberish. Actually, that one came from my password manager, and just said generate something to fill in. But most people don't realize that they can or should make up answers. Now, of course, the danger with making up an answer is that if somebody forgets their password and they have a made-up answer to a security question, then they're even perhaps more likely not to do that. And there's some great research that indicates that, I mean, there are different methods of doing that. People even forget, even when they don't make up an answer, they forget what they answered. And that's a significant problem. We'll get into that a little bit more. But one of the issues here is that when a site is using security questions for account recovery, that's usually the way of doing it. If you don't have the answer to the security question, then your other options for recovering your account are much more limited. Either because they don't exist, or because, hey, this person isn't able to answer the challenge questions, so they're more suspicious, right? So let's remember when we talk about this, and so many times when I've brought up security questions, people just say, I just answer them with junk. But I'm always talking to security people. But let's remember when we're designing these things that we are not designing them for ourselves. We're designing them for the general public. And we need to be thoughtful about how we do these things, because we want to provide security to everybody, not just a select few. So here's an example of an area where I think we're actually cueing the public even that they shouldn't make up an answer. So this is the California Department of Motor Vehicles account registration. And I had to go through this recently because I was given the option to renew my driver's license online, so I had to create an account on their site. And this is what you do to register an account number. And I don't know if you can see all of this, but it talks about entering.
Hello folks, I'm Geek here. Unfortunately, it looks like we had another video freeze up. So, audio and the speaker moving around and such should resume at about the 11-minute 45-second mark or thereabouts. Sorry for the inconvenience.
schools are in the area. You can, even the government has websites with a lot of all the public schools in a particular area. Hospitals you were born in, you just look Google Maps and say hospitals near Worcester, Massachusetts, where I grew up. My hospital was in business. Historical information. Don't forget there's things like Internet Archive that give you a lot of information about things in the past. I went back to my daughter's elementary school from several years ago, and I was able to look up who the third grade teachers were when she was in third grade. She's 16, so that's close. It probably doesn't move so well. And then of course there's the and I haven't tried these because they're too cheap, but there's the for paid for information services that might have some of this information, might not. I'm not sure. You can also guess, and there's you want to come up with a good basis for guessing. You can get first names. You can actually do quite a good job on guessing first names, especially if you know the ages first. Media, popular pet names, popular team names. I looked at the family names on the census website. That was kind of an interesting project that I did a few months ago. And Washington Post did a great article on what the popular street names are in each state. That trend by state there as well. So if you need, if an attacker needs to guess, then there are lots of resources to deal with that. And again, my point here is to try and encourage that the design of these questions really needs to be thought out if you're going to use them at all. I would love it if we didn't have these sorts of questions. I've been doing a collection of security questions on a blog that I'm making. And so people sometimes ask me, what are the worst questions that I've ever seen? And so these are the ones that are just, terrible. What is your favorite season? I mean, how many choices are there? California Department of Motor Vehicles asked, one of their choices for a question is, who was the first president that you voted for? Now that's probably memorable to a lot of people. So there are people who will select that. And unfortunately, people don't select, you give them a list of questions. Most people aren't thinking about which of these questions are going to be secure for me. They're thinking about what are the ones that I can answer. They aren't concerned with the security. And so if there's a whole choice and you have a weak question in there, the whole weaknesses of the system fails. The whole weakness of the system is great. What is the year in which you were married? I mean, that not a lot of choices. If you're 30 years old and you're married, then kind of a similarly small number of life enhancements. Now, I've been focusing on the questions that are, the ability for the hacker to guess the right answer. But it's also a problem for the people who are the intended users. A lot of the questions have more than one right answer. I mean, sometimes you don't have necessarily one best friend, but you had a best friend in third grade, and maybe you had a different one in seventh grade, or something like that. That a number of these things. What's the name of this is one that I've seen. What is the name of a college you applied to but didn't attend? I kind of like that one from a security standpoint, because people don't necessarily broadcast, hey, well, I applied to such and such a school and didn't get in. So it's good from that standpoint, but most of us have applied to more than one college and not gotten in. And so which one did I use? Canonicalization problems. There are lots of different ways of typing phone numbers. There are lots of different ways of typing addresses. Very hard to canonicalize these things in a uniform way that you'd be able to salt and hash the answer, salt and hash the canonicalized result. And another thing to bear in mind is that, part of the strategy here is you don't want to allow people to guess too many times, so you need to implement a throttling strategy. You want to make sure that your throttling strategy doesn't unduly work against the intended user. So that if the intended user has to take 5 guesses to get to the right answer, you want to make sure that you're not going to throttle them out of that possibility. So, I've talked a lot about the problems. What are the things that I would do with security questions? You might be able to use them for something very low security. It's not the thing that you're going to depend on for security, but maybe something to depend on just avoiding, a nuisance notification. So, if your site is maybe going to send somebody an email in order to reset their password, we can talk about the security of that. It's a different subject. But if you're going to do that, then perhaps you might want to ask a security question in order to make sure that at least the user has some likelihood that they are the owner of that email address. That somebody isn't just coming in and hammering on somebody else's email address in order to annoy them. You want to choose questions that are deterministic, have answers that you'll be able to hash and solve. Even if you're going to ask multiple questions, don't expect any real security. Remember that something you know plus something else that you know is not two-factor authentication. And remember that sometimes the attacker is an insider. I mean, we hear situations where disgruntled ex-spouses want to get into the ex-spouse's bank account, maybe as part of a divorce settlement or something like that, wants to see what's going on. Insider threats are there's been a lot of really good academic, really much more rigorous research done on this. There, like 3 of the top 3 bullets there are papers that are excellent. Other papers on the subject, I really recommend them. Much more rigorous than what we do as the first talk on the second day of B-Sides. And a lot of stuff having to do with memorability of the questions. A lot of stuff having to do with how much entropy is there, or whether entropy is the right measure. A lot of that sort of thing. And then at the bottom is the blog, a little gallery of these questions that I'm collecting. And if you have more, please send them to me. I like to post more examples. And then we'll close with what Fidelity put up on my screen after I answered their questions, announcing me that my account is much more secure now that I've answered these questions, and I couldn't disagree more. That's it. I welcome any questions. Yes. Okay, I'll repeat it for the microphone because it's a good one. The favorite security question was, what is your favorite internet password? If you've got a screenshot of that, I'd love that. Oh, wonderful. Great. Do we have time for one more? Gee, I'm off the hook then. I don't like a lot of the instant things, but I guess maybe SMS depends. It depends on what your threat model is and what it is you're trying to protect.
It's from Prague in Czech Republic. It's been with us several times before, and here's a nice